Well, hello, hello. Good evening, friends. Welcome to the Seven Pillars Talk Show, where we go through the seven pillars of creating an unbreakable life. And today I am so excited to share some friends with you all. My friends over here, Margo and Dana, are part of the Unbreakable Life journey. They have partnered with me and decided to come and chat about something that I feel like so many women need to work through so many times in our life, and why the unbreakable journey was begun to begin with is we walk through situations in life that are a lot of times painful. Situations in life where we don't understand what's going on. We don't understand why we're walking through it, why we were called for this, why me, all the things. But one day, just like my favorite song, Hold On by Nicole Norman, that says, one day we're going to look back and see the purpose in the pain. And that's what we're going to talk about today on the Seven Pillars Talk Show. So meet my friend Margo first. I'm going to let Margo just introduce herself and tell us a little bit about who she is, where she's from, how she serves women on the Unbreakable Life journey and or on their Unbreakable Life journey. And then we're going to meet Dana.
Thank you. Thanks for having me today. I'm so glad to be with both of you today. I feel the strength that you bring into this room, and it's very exciting and heartwarming to be here. My journey, like probably most women's journey, is a long one, and you don't see a lot of it until you look back. I was blessed to be raised in a wonderful Christian home, was brought up in the church, went into ministry. I have a master's degree in church music and spent 26 years conducting choral programs and developing choral programs for churches. It was very rewarding and exciting. It didn't have the best ending possible. I sort of fell on the losing end of some church politics, but honestly, I was ready for the end. And so it all worked out just perfectly. God pulled that together as only God can do.
People are people, aren't they?
People are people, including me. I look back and I see things I could have, should have done differently, but that's okay. God redeemed the whole thing. He redeemed me, all of the other people involved in the church itself. So it was a good thing. But during that time, when I was finishing my college years, I was engaged to be married and I got pregnant. And I felt like it was an insurmountable thing. I didn't feel like I could take it to my family. I didn't feel like I could embarrass my family or my church family. I just felt like I needed to take care of the problem. So that was 1981. I didn't put a lot of thought into it. It was still sort of newly legal at that time. And I just thought, if it's legal, it must be okay. It's a problem-solving thing. And so I did it. I got married, had children, got divorced, finished my career, went into classical Christian education. And all of this time, I never thought about the abortion. I just didn't think about it. I don't know if it was going to be too painful. I don't know if I just didn't want to face it, but I didn't have to think about it, so I didn't. Occasionally it would creep into a conversation somehow, but not anything I would really talk about. So in classical Christian education, I was required 1 year to teach a course on Christian worldview. And if you've ever been a teacher, and I know Dana has, the first year you teach something, you're literally a day, if you're doing well, ahead of your students. Yeah. If you're not, you're 2 hours ahead of your students. So I was learning the curriculum and teaching it, and we got to Christian worldview of abortion, and I've, for the first time ever, learned what the Bible has to say about it, what God's heart says on the issue. But I taught it and I got through it and moved on. But the next year when I taught it again and I could slow down, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And it didn't hit me in a way that made me ashamed. It just made me sad, so sad to think of the loss in my life that I had created for myself, and sad to think how I had gone against God's design. And so I then had to deal with it, and it took me a little while, as you can imagine. I won't go through all of that, but in doing so, I poured my heart out into writing, and it became a book. It's not a well-formed book. It's not a great piece of literature. It's not even great theology. It's just my story. That's all. And it's available if anyone wants to read it. But anyway, later, and in there also came my marriage to Ted, which has been such a gift from God. And I finally got to be a stay-at-home mom because Ted retired, sold his business. I retired. We've taken in my mom, and we just love having her with us. And so I'm finally staying at home like I would always have sort of wanted to do, but my time is now. It's late in life. So ladies, never give up hope. Your time for what God calls you to will come. But I also knew that I needed to continue my ministry of hope. Because what I did in churches through music programs, what I did in classical Christian education, what I do at home, what I've done in my neighborhoods, what I've done everywhere is help women and men sometimes, but mostly women, find hope, because it is there. It is there for everyone. And I feel like my story is just an absolute living example of that. So my purpose evolved from being a musician to being a teacher to being an administrator to being a life coach, but every bit of that comes under the general and large heading of hope. So that's my story.
I love it. I think our stories can do one or two things. They can be the thing that holds us handcuffed to pain and to, shame and regret or just feelings of not being enough. Or they can literally be somebody else's key to freedom. And I believe that's what you are doing with your book and your story and the way that you minister to women through a very painful thing that you went through. And how many women, I can't even imagine. I mean, we could look statistically about the ones that are reported, but I can't even imagine how many women will find hope from decisions. We all make decisions.
Yes.
Every single one of us, we make decisions every single day. And I wish we could say they're all great decisions.
Yeah, not going to happen.
No. But and sometimes when we can see it from a different lens, one of my favorite books is Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I love that book, right?
Yep.
And the thing that he talks about that I love the most is a paradigm shift.
Yes.
And his paradigm shift had to do with being on a train with, a bunch of people, and these kids come in and they're screaming and they're acting foolish, right? But he finally asked the guy after like 20 minutes of just insane chaos on the train by his children, he finally just kind of touches the guy and says, "Could you do something about your kids?" Right? And the guy turns to him and says, "Gosh, I guess I should do something about my kids. I don't even know what to do with myself. My wife just passed away, their mom, and I don't even know how to hold myself together, let alone those 3 kids." Right? And sometimes, Margo, just like in your story, you have to have a paradigm shift. Like the veil is torn, like the scales fall off of your eyes, and all of a sudden you see something in a different place and you can do something with it.
Yes, that's exactly right. And, probably one of the saddest parts of my personal story, even though I did terminate a pregnancy, one of the saddest parts is the divorce. I still look back on that with such grief and sadness. And how do you deal with having broken up a family? And so there are so many places where women need to find hope after they've been through a divorce, after they've been through a termination, after they've lost a job. There are places every day where women need to find hope. And yes, it's that paradigm shift. Absolutely.
Sometimes those shifts are hard to see, but they're so beautiful looking back, right? And Dana, of course, in your story, you had a big shifting moment as well when you discovered there's purpose. So tell us a little bit about you and your story.
Thank you. And it's so great to be here. I'm so excited to be here today. So my story really starts back as an adolescent, and I was sexually abused by my father. And as you know, you just deal with it. You push it under the rug and you go on to the outside world, leave it to Beaver family. But this piece was very, very confusing for me. Like all the other pieces were good and like family and parent supportive at every sporting event and all. And so it was very confusing, like, trying to figure this piece out. So it changes you because you start figuring out how do you have to change to be safe. A really powerful thing that I learned very early, that's not the truth, but I learned, was that my voice doesn't matter. And so I became a chronic people pleaser. I would walk in a room and know how I needed to change or shift or whatever to make things safe and comfortable. So anyway, I just stuffed all of that. Left home at 18, went to college, dropped out very early, didn't really have a plan, but met someone who was 10 years older than me. Went ahead and got married against advice not to. And it was a emotionally and verbally abusive marriage.
But it was an escape, yeah?
But it was an escape. It was like, okay, well, what am I going to do now? It's okay, well, I'll just get married. And I really did pursue that more than he did. And anyway, was married, ended up, it was very unhealthy. So another unhealthy relationship, still pushing things under the rug. My entire family did not know what I was going through in this marriage because I was hiding that as well. And so I ended up having my first daughter with him. And when she was born, it was like, okay, enough is enough. Like, you can't do this to her. She's a child. That was the game changer for me. So I said, we need to get help. We need to get counseling. We need to do something. And his answer was, give me the checkbook, and stepped over Rachel on the floor where she was playing and walked out the door. And then, so I had no money. I had nothing. Had to end up going back home, which was really hard because that wasn't a safe place. Even as a young adult, there were still attempts and things like that. So it was very, very uncomfortable and painful. So I go home, just holding on to all of this anxiety and shame and guilt, and, just absolutely, determined not to think of it. When I came home, I literally had nothing. I shared with you, Teresa, I had no money. I had no job. I had no college education. I was hiding all these things. So everything, I was just this complete bundle of fear. And so when I moved back home, holding on to all of that. Oh, by the way, let me back up a little bit. I am a licensed professional counselor and life coach. That's at the end of the story. But anyway, but during this time, I was just stuffing everything. Well, the body will respond if we do not process our trauma. We do not give a voice to what needs to have a voice. And so I became very, very ill during that time. I literally, people had thought I'd had a stroke. I was in the hospital for 2 weeks. They could not figure out what was wrong with me. So they just kind of labeled it as a breakdown. Nobody could help. Nobody could figure it out, but I was losing weight profusely. I couldn't drive. I couldn't work. I couldn't see. I had vertigo. I mean, the list went on and on and on, and I was just wasting away. I often describe it as I was dying of a broken heart.
And how old were you?
26 with a 3-month-old baby that I could not take care of. My parents had to take care of her, which was very stressful in itself. So prior to that, my brother was inviting, and my sister-in-law invited me to go to their church. And I had been raised in the church my whole life. And so that was something that felt familiar and felt safe. And so I was like, okay, I'll go. And so I started back to church and really, really loved it. And then he asked me, hey, you ought to play co-ed softball, because I've always been an athlete. And I said, yes, okay, I'll go, a little bit reluctant. Anyway, I ended up meeting my current husband now of 27 years playing co-ed softball. But the really beautiful part of that story is that God used him as a vessel to bring and share God's word to me. So he was the only one that would come visit me in the hospital, and he would bring me food to eat. And I always tell this little piece here. He is a retired Texas Ranger. And so he would, of course, bring Sherlock Holmes to read to me, which I didn't know what that was all about.
Okay, what is the correlation
I'm like, okay,
there?
whatever, like I'm suffering here. But then he would bring me the Bible, and he would read the Bible. And when he would read God's word to me, it was just like salve over my soul. That's the only peace I ever had in the hospital, is when he read God's word. And but there was one night that was absolutely pivotal, and it was probably the sickest I had been in the hospital, and I needed to get up and be sick in the restroom. And he helped me get in there. I have IVs, and all the things are happening. It's just this horror. I'm so ashamed and I'm so embarrassed in front of this person I barely know that's there in my greatest hour of need. And during this time of getting sick, he says to me, "You've got to get well, because God has a purpose for you." and you have to figure out what it is. And it just, something just shifted in me. And I know now it was just the Holy Spirit, just shifted. I'm like, what? You mean I have a purpose? Like, I just have this trail of mess and like just awful stuff. How is he going to use this? Look at me, but it was the life preserver I needed. And I took hold of it. And I literally never looked back. And so day by day, step by step, I started healing, recovering, surrounding myself with healthy community, friends, couples that were healthy. And of course, my husband now, GW, he was instrumental in planting those seeds of hope and purpose in me, and starting to say, you really ought to think about going back to school. You really ought to think about, XYZ. So I did. I ended up graduating. I did stay home with the kids, the two girls, for 16 years, which I absolutely love. Yeah. And then I ended up graduating with my undergrad at 40. I then got my teaching certification a couple of years later. And then I decided, I think I'm going to be in a bodybuilding competition, mind, spirit, soul. And so I did that at 49. And then at 50, when I stepped off the stage, I was in my master's program to be a counselor. And so at 52, I graduated with my master's. And so the purpose of all of this is just so clear to me now. And so I've had to do a lot of the work to get to where I am now, but through my counseling practice and through my coaching, I'm able to help women and just say, it is not over. And he is going to use everything to bring redemption to you and then to others. And so it doesn't even feel like work to me. It's just like what I was meant to do. So that's
and I think for both of y'all, it just radiates out of you. Like, this is it, and I, when I talk at UnBreakable Women's Conference, I talk a lot about the hats that we put on through life. Because I was at this networking breakfast that I had started like in 2008. And I had everybody write down, okay, who are you? Right. And so all of the things that I got is, I'm a banker, I'm a plumber, I'm a da-da-da-da. And so I just internally started thinking, no, there's more. There's more. Like, who are you? Not what hat do you wear, but who are you, right? And what is your identity? And I think when we look back at, when you are so crystal clear on who you are, it begins this whole journey of healing and health and mind shifting. And then it leads to purpose, but it takes work to figure it out, right?
It does. It does. And it can be painful work.
Yes.
But it's so worth it.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And I feel like, one of the reasons that I believe that UnBreakable has been such an amazing journey for myself and for so many other women is because most of the time we find ourselves swimming in the shallow end, right? We find like swimming in the shallow end. Now, at 4'10", my shallow end might be a little bit different than somebody else's shallow end, but we are surface level people as a society, right? And so it's very easy to just let life just kind of bend us. And if we're not careful and we're not solid on our identity first, it's very easy that final hit just takes us out. Right? Especially in a situation like your body was breaking down because of all of this stuff that you held on to, right?
Yes.
And we see it all the time. So many people are walking around with illnesses that they can't explain. They're trying to fill it with, medication that is doing other things to them.
Yes.
And so I want both of y'all to give me and I'll start with you, Margo, but to give me an example of how through working with somebody and helping them go deeper than surface level, because again, this is where I'm finding most of us are lying at surface level. Like, I get up every morning, I get dressed, put on a face, put on a mask, right? Show up at work, still have that mask on, performance driven, all the things, come home from work, performance for family, right? Yes. But at the end of the day, I still don't know who I am if I don't take the intentional time to figure it out. So as a life coach and somebody who gives hope and somebody who helps, your 180 approach, right?
Yes.
Can you give me an example of, now obviously we know like coaching and therapy and all those things, we have to be mindful of not using people's names, but can you give me an example of an experience where you just really helped somebody? Because a question I get a lot is, what is coaching and why do I need it?
Yes.
Or we've all grown up, I think, with the stigma that if I get therapy, that means something is wrong with me. I remember one time I thought, there's nothing wrong with me. Everything's wrong with me, right? But you finally get to that place and people are like, well, what is it? And why do I need it? And I've done all the things. I've read all the books. I've watched all the TikTok reels. What have you seen by working one-on-one with somebody on how you've been able to help them have their light bulb or their mind shifting moments?
Well, I will use a current client as an example, and anything I reveal will obviously not reveal this person's identity, and they're not from anywhere around here. I don't even know if they've ever been to Texas. Unlike Dana, I don't have a background in mental health. I don't. I have life experience as a background. I have my faith and my knowledge of a biblical worldview as a background. And I have the ways that God has redeemed me. One of the greatest, maybe the greatest way that God has redeemed me was brought me a godly husband who prays with me, who prays over me, who covers me, who gave me the opportunity to become a life coach. So not having a mental health background educationally, I feel like my job is, one, to make sure if someone needs to be with a mental health professional, that I am steering them there or guiding them in that direction, maybe even helping them find the resources for that. I feel like my job is mostly to start with where they are, go backwards just a little bit. I'm not going to go too far back because I don't have the tools to help them with what has happened in the past. But what I can do is help someone figure out where they are, where they want to be, where God probably wants them to be, and help them figure out through a series of questions and discussions. And life coaches aren't supposed to give advice. I'm not a good life coach because I give a lot of advice. That's just my nature, and I don't think that I'll be changing that. But anyway, so for instance, I am working with a young couple, mostly her right now, but I'll be working with him some too. And they are in a very common situation. They found themselves expecting a baby. They weren't married. There were the questions of what do we do? They chose life. I applaud them for that. And they are now trying to navigate. Well, they chose life and eventually chose marriage. They married just before the baby came. And now they're trying to figure out, how do we make a go of this? They made the decisions. Now they're trying to figure out how. So maybe things are a little out of order, but you know what? That's okay. That doesn't.
Who establishes the order, right?
Well, exactly. I mean, ideally, there would have been figuring it out, then getting married, then having the baby. It didn't happen in that order, but that's okay, because even if that was God's original design, He doesn't hold us to, you messed up.
Thank
you
God.
can never be redeemed. Thank God. That's exactly right. And I want to say that my coaching is from a Christian worldview. That does not mean that a client has to hold that same worldview, because I'm going to pray over a client, but I will not pray with a client without their permission. Most people, even if they either don't agree with a biblical worldview or they have not been introduced to it, like I wasn't for 50 years, they still would agree that biblical principles are good ones. So we don't have to be on the same page with our faith in order for me to be able to coach them effectively and for them to receive. But anyway, that is an example of where I am able to bring hope to them because they're struggling as newlyweds do. They're trying to figure out, did we make a mistake? Should we have gone in another direction? But I am able to help them understand things that you would think are common knowledge, but they're the furthest thing in the world from common knowledge. And that is, what does it take to be a good wife and a mother? What does it take to be a good husband? What is the model for that? And there are great models for that, both in the secular world and obviously in the biblical world. There are great models. So just knowledge brings hope. If you don't have that knowledge, you can't have the hope that would come with that knowledge. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, but I hope I did.
Yeah, you did. And it's coaching, therapy, a friend. It all matters. And one of the things that God revealed to me over the last 4 years on my Unbreakable life journey is that He's equipped me with a new muscle called empathy. And all of those things that I went through. And if you haven't heard my full story, I'm not going to go into it today because this is about you ladies, but come to Unbreakable and learn a little bit more. But I will say all of the things that I went through were creating a muscle called empathy, because you can have all the knowledge in the world, but until you have experienced something, you can never feel a person, right? And you can't, in my opinion, it's very hard to be transparent or even approachable with somebody in their dark moments. Now, it doesn't have to be the same thing. Like, we don't have to experience, and it's actually, from your background and from neuroscience, study that I've done, it is impossible for us to experience the exact same thing, even if we walked through the same issue, because of the way our brains work, the way our emotions work, the way God created us, all of our gifts, strengths, and talents. It's impossible to walk exactly through it, but to walk through it with somebody that isn't just going to throw, I think of the book of Job, his friends, which, his friends were like, well, let me just tell you what to do. Right. But he just needed somebody to love him through it. And I think that's what you're doing with that couple.
Yes. And it makes me thankful for the fires I have walked through, because as you said, they developed that empathy muscle. And I can, even though, like you said, it can't be exactly the same, I can say, listen, I know a little of what you're going through. I've been there, but let's talk about this, because there are such great answers and solutions. And while you may not be able to see it all clearly right now, you're young, I can tell you, we all look back. And what I want to do is help you look back and see that you did many things right. And the things that you did wrong were not insurmountable. They are overcomable. You are unbreakable. And there's a way through this. And it's full of hope. You're going to look back and you're going to love your story.
I always tell people, stop despising the hard, because, we can definitely have chosen that path. We could have chosen to despise our abuse stories. We could have chosen to despise the divorce story, whatever. Despising it literally just puts hatred towards it. And you can't do anything in that. Like, nothing good comes out of that. Right. So I'm not saying embrace all those things and love them and hope for more, but don't despise them, because one day you're going to use that as a tool in your toolbox. So Dana, tell us about how you have provided maybe help with purpose, and tell us a little bit about your model and how you've served people.
So a way I like to describe counseling versus coaching is that when clients come in for counseling, they're usually coming in with obviously a problem, but it could be, more clinical, anxiety, depression, etc. You can define those through the DSM-5, but you're just trying to bring them up to homeostasis. Okay. And then that's what therapy does, right? But then there's this whole nother level, which is where the life coaching comes in. Okay, so now we have homeostasis, which means everything is, we're calm, we're working through some of this, we've got some strategies going, but now we want to level up. So the life coaching is the leveling up piece. And as we were talking, I was just thinking about, I had a couple of clients that just wrapped up their programming, and I'm like, oh, which one do I want to talk about? Because it was so rewarding. But my 180 method coach program is basically breaking the 360 cycle that we all get in, the hamster wheel. So the thoughts, the emotions, the same things that are not working, we're not able to move forward. We're feeling stuck. And so women will come and I need a change, or I need something to shift. I feel stuck. And so the 180 is, the 180. So it's like you start here and you go here. So it's the healing, and it's getting women to take ownership, not saying they are to blame for their pain, but ownership where ownership needs to come in. And one of the things that we look at is our circumstances. A lot of folks do not realize that they are co-creators in their circumstances. Now, that can sound really strange because let's say, take my example. Okay, so I had abuse. So I could say, what do you mean I co-created that? That wasn't my fault. That wasn't. But here's the thing. It's how we learn to relate to ourselves are the circumstances we're creating. So if I relate to myself that I don't have a voice, I need to hide, I need to do these certain things, then I'm not causing this thing to happen, but I am part of the circumstance, right? And so when we start to realize how we're relating to ourselves is directly impacting the circumstances we're in today. Yeah. So if I believe I don't have a voice, I'm unworthy, I'm not enough, nothing good is ever meant for me, those are not who you are. Most likely when we go back, those are circumstances that have happened to you that created meaning. You created meaning from those. And so now that's how you're relating to yourself currently. And this is the result you're getting, all this stuff that you're not wanting and all the feelings of stuck and frustration and not living this abundant life that, God called us to. It's like, well, where's that? And like you mentioned earlier, like we just get, we can either despise the things that happen to us or we can take ownership and say, okay, well, that's a chapter of my story, but it's not the whole story, right? And so helping women to really realize that they are a daughter of the King, created in the image of God. That's who they are. They are not this thing that they attached meaning to based on a circumstance that happened to them. And so anyway, so I don't want them just dealing. I want them healing. And so it's understanding the core belief of self that then affects how you relate to yourself, which then we also develop these dominant behaviors to sustain this meaning that's not healthy. So we show up with these
controlling,
codependent, argumentative, avoidant personality, all these things that are not healthy. Then this 360 we're trying to break then determines our circumstances and our relationships. So that what we need to learn to do is master the 180 life circle and understand this is my core belief. This is how I relate to myself, which is the truth. Then I have healthy, natural behaviors that are from God, that are beautiful, that then create the new circumstances in the current relationships I have, which are all healthy. So you have two different 360s you see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So that just is mind blowing for clients. They're like, oh, that's not who I am. I'm like, no, that's not who you are. You just gave yourself a meaning based on that, but that is not what God says to you. And then most of my women are Christian women that come to me, and those that aren't, just like you mentioned, like, okay, well, we can still run with that. I'm still going to pray for you and do all the things. But I just had two clients that finished their 6th month and they were just on fire because now we also talk about divine purpose. Okay. So once they learn all this, then they're like, oh, this unworthy feeling I had because I had a child out of wedlock and there was shame and guilt because she had been raised in this Christian family. You mean I now get to go share with other women that they are worthy? They're not, yeah, you get to do that. Comfort those with the comfort you've received. That's what our goal is. So they see their divine purpose coming out of their pain, which was their shame.
Which was masked by shame. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. So it's a whole thing. So I'm sorry.
No, I think that is beautiful. One of the things that I picked up along my journey is our brains, the actual brain looks for facts. The fact was this happened to me. The fact was that's a choice I made. But our mind looks for evidence to support those facts all the time. Yes. And that's where those words come in, right?
Oh, see, there you go. Oh,
yes.
See, you put it to yourself.
Yep.
That limited belief system. But another thing too, Teresa, is getting emotionally hijacked, which is often what happens in these relationships. Like, and so what happens when you get, it's a whole brain thing. But anyway, we get it. And I'm sure you just even saying that you can think of, do y'all remember, I'm going to show my age here. Do y'all remember John McEnroe, the tennis player? Yeah. You don't? Okay. Well, he would get emotionally hijacked on the tennis court, right? He would lose his mind and throw his tennis racket. So when we get into an emotional hijack, you can do that. You can with a coworker, where you just, nothing good is going to come of this conversation. So guess what? We literally need to stop talking for 20 minutes to let our bodies calm down somatically, right? So we get emotionally hijacked, which are triggers, and these cycles happen all the time. So we have to recognize, where am I getting emotionally hijacked?
Right. And where's the root
cause of the hijack? Because that's the
cycle.
that's the cycle. So it's just also, again, like you said, Margo, knowledge is power. The Bible says that. So let's look under every rock. And just because I'm in a counselor doesn't mean that I want to sit in family of origin stuff forever. Right? It is data is what it is. I just need the data, but we don't need to sit there to heal.
Well, and I want to talk about healing for a minute, because a lot of times people, number one, we don't realize that we're still wounded. I think, in your story, it was a great example, and your story as well. For me, I worked with a coach for several years, worked with a business coach for a long time because we have multiple businesses. And at one point I'm like, this isn't enough. Like, the business is fine, but the business is a reflection of me. I'm the owner, right? And so so finally I had to say, it's time to look inward. It's time to do what Carl Jung says. Yes, those who look outside dream, but those who look inside, what? They awaken, right? Yeah. And so it was time to start doing that. So I worked with a life coach and, started really peeling back layers, because what I kept running into is like, well, this business can go so far, and then I hit a wall, and that business could go, and homeschool can go so far, and then I started getting resentful, and I would blame lack of performance on too many hats or too many things, and so it just became this really vicious cycle, and I just would get frustrated. And then I would find myself actually coming to the place, the phone would ring, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what do you want? Like, it was that.
A dread almost.
Yes. Feeling like I can't ever be enough for everybody. Everybody is demanding on me. I'm not performing. And nobody knew that. I mean, maybe they caught the tone every once in a while. I know my husband did. But but it was like, I couldn't figure out what the issue was. And so we started working together and peeling back layers. And I think the reason I want to share that is because a lot of people might be like, well, I don't have a story like Margo, and I don't have a story like Dana. But we all have a story, and we all are telling ourselves a story. And what I had finally gotten to the place with this particular, journey on my healing journey was I had finally come to this place where this story, I didn't know it was going on autopilot. I didn't know it was constantly playing. I just knew, I kept hearing in my spirit, I kept feeling like, well, Teresa, if you ever, do that, people are going to find out. And it was just a whisper. But it was an effective whisper, right? And if you get to that level and they find out, because, social media is so big and they can dig stuff up, and if they find out,
yes,
right? That was that whisper. And then finally one day the Holy Spirit convicted me, and he said, it's time to stop. You tell them. And what he revealed to me in that is that the thing that I was afraid of people finding out about was actually slowing me down, where it could have been the thing that released people from their pain and their suffering and their shame. And so I made a decision, and that's where, with UnBreakable, the theme is, that was the day she decided to become unbreakable, the day she took back her power. And the day that I told my story for the first time, it actually was at a Mary Kay event, and I didn't realize I was going to spill the beans. Like, I was supposed to talk about purpose. I was talking about what hinders us from walking in purpose. But student teacher, it was one of those things. I was teaching on this, and then God just it was like Holy Spirit just took over, and I shared my story, and I saw the audience just, the first, and they're not expecting vulnerability. They're not expecting transparency. And when they get hit with it, just everything starts to unfold, right? And that's what's so powerful about being, yes. And so that's when so as I started the Unbreakable Life journey, one of the things that I realized is that we don't heal ourselves for the sake of our past. Our past is done. It's over. We heal ourselves for the sake of our future, right?
Beautiful.
talking about Carl Jung and what he said, and also what you just said. And you made a reference a minute ago to something that the Bible says. And one thing it says that's so important to all of this is, where there is no vision, the people perish. And that's why starting where you are and looking forward is the important part, because, and creating a vision so that you can look forward, so that you can walk forward healed, or at least in healing. And, you know, one of the things that I've learned in taking care of my mother, who's now 89, and I say taking care of her, she takes care of herself. We just get to enjoy having her with us and having her be part of our lives right now. But in whatever ways we all take care of each other, I have learned that you don't outgrow the need for vision. You don't outgrow, you don't outage needing to be healed from things and needing to walk forward with clarity of mind and healing, and knowing about redemption, and knowing about God and his love and his favor upon you. You need that your entire life until the day you die. Yeah. So this is not something that's just now because we're in this prime of our lives and we're really with it. No, this is for everyone, every minute.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's when we lose sight of purpose that we really can go downhill. When we feel like we don't have a purpose, when we feel like, what's the point? Why did I? And that goes into, you know, all of those, again, limiting beliefs, but beyond that, like no hope, right? When you don't have hope, what do you have?
That's right.
You know, and
without,
I think,
and without the vision, you can't have the hope.
You can't. Yeah, it works together. And so I'm so grateful that you said that. And, you know, healing is definitely a journey. And I think until the day that we go on, you know, when shortly my mom passed away in October of last year, and I brought home from the funeral some of her belongings. The shirt she had lung cancer, and she had this blue shirt that had Rosie the Riveter on it, and it said warrior on it, lung cancer survivor, and then on the bottom it said UnBreakable. And this was before UnBreakable was really born. And I mean, it seems so recent, but it really is. God gave me that vision and I was obedient, and I'm so grateful. Yeah. But I remember being in my bathroom one day and I thought, this isn't fair. Like, this says UnBreakable, but she broke. And God said, sometimes we do break. And that's when our journey is over. And you get to go home. You get your reward. But until then, my desire is to make you unbreakable.
And your mother's spirit did not break, it sounds like.
Oh, no.
Her body broke and she went home,
but
her spirit stayed unbroken.
Yeah. All right, Anna, it's your turn. Like, I can't continue with that.
Yeah, no, well, I can. I was thinking on something that you were talking about. You know, I've gone through the 180 method. So I'm so passionate about it, and how you co-create. So, and I was sharing with Margo earlier that I'm part of these mastermind groups, and one of these beautiful women, it's her mastermind group up in Dallas. Because you know, I'm past, like, I really struggle with social media. Okay, like I was born too early, late. What is it? too early. And so I struggle with it, and I kept thinking, oh, it's because I don't know how to do social media. And you know, if I wasn't posting, I wasn't posting. And she's like, you've got to be posting. You've got to be, you know. And then finally, at her conference at the end, when I was leaving, she said, "Dana, you need to quit hiding." I said, "What? I'm not hiding. I'm like the most outgoing person you're ever going to meet." You know, like. Oh, okay. You know, and I leave. I'm like, what is that hiding? Well, as I was going, and I believe, like you said, I think you were on the track to this, we have layers of healing. Yeah. I don't think we're healed and it's done. Right. I think in God's mercy, like he gave me just enough to heal in that broken moment to take the next best step. If he would have laid it all on me at that moment, I don't know, you know, he can do anything, but in my humanity, he knew I could only take a little at a time, and then I heal and I go, and then, oh, this needs healing too. Okay. And so, you know, and it's a process, right? So when Amber Lee said this to me, I'm like, what is she talking about? I'm hiding. And it really isn't that I don't know how to use all the social media. It was that I was creating the circumstance that my voice doesn't matter. Currently,
yeah.
I'm like, and I'm like, I'm in this, I'm coaching people on this. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm creating, here I am.
Yeah.
So it's no matter level of success or degrees or anything. It's
Exactly.
just when it hits you, it hits you. So I want to be very vulnerable and share a moment of circumstance. And that is, so in my marriage, I was very quiet. I was just a very obedient, submissive Christian wife, just whatever. I always wanted to say it, but I didn't, and we had a beautiful marriage. But guess what happened? I started healing. I started learning. I started growing. And guess what? This voice just starts happening.
Right.
And my husband's like, wow, you've changed. Like, what is that? You're so opinionated. I'm like, no, this is just like, I never got to be who I really was. I was hiding all that. I was shrinking. I was not feeling safe, but I never felt safer in my own healing and what God says I am. And even in our marriage, you give me a safe place to use my voice, to practice using my voice, right?
Yeah.
So this is who I always have been. I just didn't know it. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm still learning. Like, why? And so now I'm like, oh, that's why she says hiding, because I was still, my voice doesn't matter, core belief of self, but that's not true. Right. And so then learning to start using my voice and start all those things. So it's always a journey. I don't think we've ever arrived till we go home. Right. And so we're always learning. And if we can share what we're learning along the way with other women and help them find freedom and purpose, it's what we're here to do.
Absolutely. And on so many different levels, as you said, well-educated levels, less educated levels. I don't have a background in the same things you have background in. Our life stories are different, but all of it matters. And all of us can help someone. It's like the story you said a minute ago. Yeah. Someone, you can help someone. Everyone can help someone.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think about people that, and when I created UnBreakable, and it sounds like both of y'all's coaching goes through a lot of the same pillars as the UnBreakable life does, because we start with self-discovery and then we go on to our mindset and mind shifting, and then our core beliefs. What are they? Where are they? Why are they? To our defining moments and trauma, to health, to community, and then eventually to purpose. And that is that's the order that God showed me with the UnBreakable life. And really the order that he took me through it. But I thought about this for myself, because several years ago, 2008 or 2009, I got involved with a network marketing company called Beachbody. And I love Beachbody. I love Chalene Extreme and Turbo Jam workouts and shake. Like, I love all those things. But at that point, I was like, PMS, physically, mentally, spiritually fit. Like, I was going to create this business called PMS Fit. And my husband thought, that's the stupidest name I've ever heard. Like, people are not going to come around somebody who is having a PMS Fit, right? So I learned about the power of wording. But what I learned in that journey is I had worked on healing my physical body, but I didn't start with identity, and I didn't start with beliefs, and I didn't go into defining moments and trauma. I didn't do any of that. And so as I started healing physically, and what I see happen a lot is when we start healing physically, a lot of times people kind of lose it and they kind of go off and do something crazy, or, they leave other people behind them, and they do these types of things. So it's that work that you do, discovering who you are, discovering your core beliefs, that all that inner work should happen, to me, in my opinion, first, because then when you start feeling better and you start healing, then and you have a revelation that everyone around you they need that same thing. They need that healing. They need that growth. They need those mind shifting moments, and you can see them from a different place. So I think about your story with you and your husband, and me and my husband. A lot of times as I was going through coaching, I would be healing in certain areas, and he's not seeing things on the same page that I was seeing them on. And, I had to realize very quickly, and for the sake of our marriage and our relationship, that we had to heal together. Like, it wasn't just us individually, me, Teresa, individually, because God united us for a very strong reason and purpose, and to complete one another in him, right? And so, Royal and I actually started UnBreakable Marriage, and we love that. But he also, God didn't assign me to help my husband's healing journey,
Right.
but to support him through it, and provided other people that can
Yeah.
reach him
Right.
through his healing journey. And I want to talk about the power of community for a few
Mhm.
moments,
Mhm.
because our community, as a coach and a counselor,
Mhm.
you know, we establish community. It may not be a big group thing. It may be a one-on-one, but
Sure.
community is found in connection and collaboration. And I want you to talk about the power of community for your life, and then I'll have you share yours as well.
Well, sure. We all need other people in our lives. Community is at home, community is at work, community is right here, community is at church. God designed us to be in community. He designed us to be in relationship with other people. And so community is essential. And when someone engages us as coaches or counselors or friends or neighbors, they are engaging us because there's a little piece missing in their community of people, and they need someone to help be that missing link that they need right now. And, you know, the thing about being a life coach or a good neighbor or a good mother or good anything that we do, it is what God is calling you to at that very moment, whether you're the most qualified person or not. For example, when I had the great opportunity and privilege to connect with Sand Hills Classical Christian School, I did not have a background in education. I didn't have a teaching certificate. I certainly didn't have a background in administration. But you know what I had right then, and this really applies to community, what I had the skills and ability to do right then was exactly what they needed, not all the other stuff that somebody else could come in later that was qualified to do. What they needed was someone to establish culture for that school. Now, we never used those words. They didn't say, we're hiring someone to establish culture. And I didn't come in with my little pitiful resume and said, I'm a culture establisher. That's what I do. Those words were never used, but that's what they needed. Those are the gifts God gave me. And establishing culture is part of building community. So whether it's at a school, whether it's at home, whether it's in a coaching relationship, a marriage, whatever it is, God designed us to be in strong community. And I would say, as a life coach, as a hope coach, that the greatest hope always comes in making your community stronger and doing the right things to have a fulfilling and cooperative community where you give and where you take.
I love that. So good. So good.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, I agree. Everything you said was absolutely beautiful. You know, going back to my brokenness and finding resources, church was a beautiful place for me to go. And it's so important. I know when I have clients, whether coaching or counseling, one of the first questions I ask is, what are the resources you have for support?
Right.
Because like you mentioned, Margo, is that usually it's not family, unfortunately, right? Not yet anyway. And so just establishing those relationships, those are so important for me because my family wasn't there for me. I mean, they did give me, to their credit, a home, a place to get it together per se for a very short time. But, you know, it was just putting myself out there. Like you said, going to play softball, or then I was asked to do the welcome at church. I'm like, oh my goodness, somebody wants me to, you know, use my voice. Right.
Yes.
Like, then it was like, the pastor came to me and said, well, we really want you to be in the drama. I'm like, the drama, like on stage, you know, like I couldn't believe it. But again, when you position yourself around community and support, others will see gifts and talents in you and they will draw them out. Who had any idea? One of the greatest joys of my life was doing dramas at the church. It was so fun, but just being part of like, we called ours life links groups, couples getting together, supporting one another, friends that are praying for you. Just there's it is so important because had I not had that, what would I have a single mom with a 3, 4, 5-month-old baby coming out of a divorce?
Probably more anxiety.
More anxiety.
Nobody to share the
and
load with.
I wanted to be in healthy places. I did know that. Like, I need to be in healthy places. Well, this is all I know. So I'm going to go to church. My brother invited me, and the rest was history. But absolutely. And like you speak to the word of God, you know, we were born as relational beings. We were not born to do anything alone. And everything is just so much more beautiful when we do it together. And so, it was crucial for my healing, being in community.
And to discover purpose. One of the
Mhm.
things that I really enjoy Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and the whole pyramid of human behavior and how we excel, right? And so the first level is, we know this, it's survival. Do we have air in our lungs? Do we have food?
Yes.
Right. And then can we run from the bear?
Yes.
Do we have shelter is number 2. But to get to a place, and I think about what happened as a society to us over the last 5 years. Community was stripped away from every angle, whether you became a work from home person because your job canceled all, in-person meetings, or you were told church, you can't go to church. We built this lifestyle that separated community, and so intentional because I believe, because the one thing that takes us from living in a life of survival mode and scarcity and safety and shelter into a life of self-discovery and purpose. That one little spot on the hierarchy of needs is called community, love, and belonging, right? We can't get to purpose. See, I believe 100% that sometimes our purpose is from pleasure. Sometimes it's from pleasure. Many times it's from pain. But every time it's attached to people, right? And you can't get to that place of feeling fulfillment and living the life of divine purpose, as you spoke about, without connecting yourself to people. But as you said, it takes intention. Like, we want people to just, like, the right people to, like, magically appear around us. Like, boop, there you are. There's all my friends that keep me going and keep my heart smiling. But that's not the case.
That's right.
We have to create it. So, UnBreakable is a great place for you to find community. And with these ladies, it's a great place to find community, but there's plenty of places. And one of the things that we're going to be talking about at UnBreakable, one of the panels that we're going to have at this particular conference is a community panel. And so our attendees will get to meet people that have created community, that are creative people that have decided, I'm going to either jump into a community or I'm going to create the type of community that I need. And so at this event, you're going to be able to, identify places, and maybe it's not their community that you need, but it will hopefully give you some ideas on how to establish the right community for you.
Beautiful.
Awesome. It's going to be a great day.
It's going to be a great day.
On so many levels. I can hardly wait.
Yes. Okay. So you can see Margo at UnBreakable. She will be having a booth. And do you want to tell them a little bit about the name of your business and how they can find you?
Sure. I will have on my table a few copies of my book. And like I said, it's not a great piece of literature. It's not good theology. It's just my story, but it's available, and it might bring hope to someone, or might bring hope to someone that someone knows. Almost everyone is affected somehow by abortion from either the past or from current decision making or crisis pregnancies. So I'll have my book there. I also will have some big business cards and pamphlets on my life coaching business, which is called Reason Together Life Coaching, because in Isaiah, when God was speaking to the Israelites, and he actually was disciplining them and kind of showing them the error of their ways, but he didn't just lay that on them. He said, come, let us reason together. And I love that image because it's community, it's finding purpose. And so I invite my clients to come. I don't have all the answers, but you come, we're going to reason together. So I'll have some information there on Reason Together Life Coaching.
I love it. Love it. And I'm grateful that you are going to be there. And Dana is going to be at the event with us. And well, we might have an announcement for next year. But anyway, tell them how they can reach you.
Yes. Thank you so much, Teresa. Real simple, Dana, middle initial D, Hildebrand.com. So DanaDHildebrand.com. And you can find all my information, counseling and coaching and blogging and all the things. Yeah.
All the things.
Yeah, all the things.
All the things.
Yeah.
Well,
I try to keep
friends,
it simple because y'all know my struggle with social media.
look, it's
Just
the
a
name.
.com.
Yes, my website is teresapoor.com. I could have done Unbreakable. I could have done 320 Consulting. I really just want you to find me, and then we will figure out where you fit, right?
Exactly. I love it.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for sharing your time with us today. And thank you to my amazing guests for being
happy to be
so
here. It was
willing.
fun.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And thank you to Royal for running the
Yes.
sounds, making this all work. But until we see you next time, go out and continue building your unbreakable life. God bless you, friends.